We're still a good year out from the anticipated launch of Grand Theft Auto 6, but that has not given pause to the insane barrage of theories surrounding this game. Much of the theories pertained to the second trailer that evaded us for 500 plus days until we finally got it earlier this month. But there's one theory that's been cutting about for a bit that strikes me as interesting, even if I'm not entirely convinced it's going to go anywhere. It's a narrative idea pertaining to one of the player protagonists.
What's your name?
Jason Duval.
I think you heard before.
You might have.
In GTA 6, we're going to be playing as Lucia Caminos and Jason Duval, and we're to join them as they embark on a life of crime, in something that's been likened to a bit of a Bonnie and Clyde-esque story. But the theory goes that Jason is actually an undercover police officer, or an informant or something. He's secretly living a life of law. It's a theory that's been circulating for a while, it's been speculated to death, it sounds ridiculous, it more than likely is ridiculous, but let's channel my inner brain injury, I have covered worse, and let's explore it because what else am I going to do? Now this theory is about as old as the game's announcement, if not older. It's complicated and it's a bit of a cliche theory, so it was going to crop up eventually. But with the second trailer and the endless slew of information that came along with it, it seemed to pick up a modicum of traction again. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a popular theory, as we're about to go into, it's not based on an awful lot of substance, but I have been seeing it increasingly crop up during my ill-advised passing usage of Twitter, and of course there are a multitude of videos on the topic on YouTube, catering to both sides of the argument of course. But what basis does this theory have? Well, I think it chiefly originated from this artwork back when the game was announced that perhaps tells you it's not the most intelligently thought out theory of all time. Lucia here has got herself an Asbo and Jason's just stood there looking like an guy. Now of course this artwork came alongside trailer 1 that was highly focused on Lucia, with Jason showing up but not really receiving much attention. We didn't even learn his name in that trailer. However, we did learn that possibly a narrative theme of this game is going to be trust. It's a very vague thing when spelled out, but you get the inkling it's going to be a source for tension. Something that between these two characters you'd wager is going to be put to the test, and that could take many forms, and likely will encompass multiple. After all, if Red Dead Redemption 2 has taught us anything, Rockstar games like complex, deeply explored storylines. There are a couple more details, but they seem to be strengthened with Trailer 2 to a point, alongside all the peripheral details that dropped with that trailer. The second trailer shows Jason in the graces of Brian Heder, a drug runner for whom Jason appears to operate as muscle. In fact, we see him in the trailer performing what appear to be shakedowns, before jumping on the road and heading to the prison where Lucia is incarcerated to pick her up because she's being released, and that's where we get this interesting exchange in dialogue.
I think you heard before.
You might have.
The corrections officer, let's name him Greg, seems to recognise Jason. Now this dialogue could certainly be taken in a multitude of ways, and I think this theory does hinge on taking it the wrong one. The theory implies that these two characters have crossed paths in the past, with Jason working as a law enforcement officer, but I'm sorry to say there are just simpler explanations. A, this corrections officer could have worked at a prison that Jason had once been incarcerated in, and B, Jason's romantic partner has been doing time in this very facility. So, chances are good he's visited, you'd have thought. Granted, the dialogue is ambiguous, so it's probably worth taking into account the intent, and that is to showcase the character. It's to give us a feel for that stoic edge that Jason appears to possess. It's a popular archetype, particularly for main protagonists in open world games, because ultimately you're going to be spending a lot more time with this character than they have dialogue for, so a more reserved, introspective individual will be a lot easier to believe that you're embodying even when you're a million miles from a cutscene. A character that possesses enough of these traits to be noteworthy as Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. Perhaps more so the John Marston we meet in Red Dead Redemption, albeit the technology of 2010 did not explore him as colourfully as the technology of 2018 allowed us to explore Arthur. But you get the point, not only do Rockstar express preference for this character archetype, they excel at delivering it. GTA 6's second trailer places significant emphasis on ensuring we get a similar vibe from Jason. This interaction serves as more evidence for his reserved nature, more so than it may very well be used to indicate a plot point. So ultimately, the fact that he's not willing to volunteer more information than is necessary to a corrections officer isn't really evidence of an awful lot, but there are other things in this trailer worthy of note. For instance, the guy who more or less outright asks if he is a Fed. I can't show this for Content ID purposes as there's music blaring over the top of it, and all I can say is if this was intended to be an advanced plot twist, protagonist, then Rockstar wouldn't be spelling it out for us in the second trailer. Furthermore, I don't think this is supposed to be highlighting the prospect of Jason being a police officer, but rather just showcasing the defensive nature of somebody I'm sure has more than his fair share of reasons to be defensive. This is, after all, GTA, and there doesn't have to be a Rosa afoot for the paranoia to be justified. Now, another thing worthy of note in this trailer is perhaps the most compelling aspect in favour of this theory, if you ask me, and that's the use of a couple scenes where there are some bobbies. Now, the thing that's been fixated on is in this shot, people believe that this arm we see close to the camera is in fact Jason, and you never know, it may very well be, but that's not necessarily what I would get at if I was being an advocate for this theory. I would more so focus on the inclusion of these scenes and how that might imply that these are scenes within the game, and considering Rockstar Games' specialty for character-focused storytelling, and how the perspective is often limited to the protagonist or protagonists. Replay GTA 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2 and you'll struggle to find an instance where there's a cutscene that doesn't involve one of the protagonists. Try and find a scene between chapters 1 and 6 of Red Dead Redemption 2 where Arthur Morgan is not involved at all. That kind of cutaway just does not happen, and while it's not an absolute rule that Rockstar must follow, the track record suggests that one of the main protagonists, Jason or Lucia, is in fact present for whatever the hell is going on here. This early, the capacity of that involvement is difficult to quantify. After all, there are many ways to get caught up in the doings of law enforcement, especially in a universe that portrays such officials as corrupt. Take for instance the heavy involvement with the FIB, the parody equivalent to the FBI, as seen in GTA 5. And while we're at it, while this is in-game footage of some variety, we are not this early privy to the broader context of the scene and how it's perceived. The first trailer put a lot of focus on the likes of social media, and of course this second trailer being purportedly in-game footage means it's likely a mixture of gameplay and cutscenes. Since with Red Dead Redemption 2 Rockstar Games proved seamless at blending the two, any shot could in theory be either. So while we can discern the likelihood of a character's engagement with whatever's going on here with these cops, there's no information that tells us why, nor to what end. We'll return to another aspect of this trailer in the broader scope of Grand Theft Auto as a series in a minute, but there are other elements from Trailer 1 to entertain that perhaps became more interesting with Trailer 2's existence in the periphery. Now, a few screenshots that dropped alongside Trailer 2 showed that Jason is partial to wearing a baseball cap backwards, and there's one where he's in a car with Brian and he's got a tactical vest on. And in the first trailer there's a shot of a police officer with a vest and a backwards baseball cap. So therefore they must be the same person, right? Well, no. Sure, the ballistic vest isn't something people cut about in on a regular basis, but the backwards cap isn't a style choice exclusive to Jason. As for the reason for the vest, well, he's with Brian, a drug runner, so chances are good he's doing crimes and might get shot at, and it's highly unlikely the vest says police on the back because I doubt that Brian would be chill with that, and this cop is wearing a vest because he also risks getting shot at busting crime. This appears to be a recording of some description to express the world, so it doesn't necessarily have to pertain to the character either. So the only real correlation behind the vest, the style choice, and maybe a white t-shirt is the athletically built generic white man look. So the link is tenuous until proven otherwise. So everything we've explored so far has more or less in my mind clarified that this isn't really a theory, it's more baseless speculation. But would this idea work? Alongside the second trailer, Rockstar did give us some information about our two main protagonists. We learn that Jason wants the easy life, but things just keep getting harder. He grew up around grifters and crooks, and after a stint in the army trying to shake off his troubled teens, he found himself in the Keys doing what he knows best, working for local drug runners. Meeting Lucia could be the best or worst thing to ever happen to him. Jason knows how he'd like it to turn out, but right now, it's hard to tell. As for Lucia, we learn that her father taught her to fight as soon as she could walk. Life's been coming at her swinging ever since. Fighting for her family landed her in Leonida Penitentiary. Sheer luck got her out. Lucia's learned her lesson. Only smart moves from here. More than anything, she wants the good life her mum has dreamed of since their days in Liberty City. But instead of half-baked fantasies, Lucia is prepared to take matters into her own hands. What's important to note here is of the duo, Lucia is the dreamer, and it's her aspirations that will no doubt see an escalation in the audacity of the crimes the two characters commit. As for Jason, if anything, his backstory from what we've been told has suggested that he's tried to escape this life in the past. He's not necessarily after a good life like Lucia, he just wants an easy life. Those two things aren't the same, in fact they often exist in opposition. So if we return to the notion of trust being a pivotal concept in this story, we have two characters whose interests only appear to be aligned up until a point, and I'm sure the narrative will produce tension on this point, but I don't think that's necessarily going to pertain to Jason being a police officer, or something like that. You see, I get the impression that Lucia being in prison will be the start of the game, or at the very least reasonably early on, and these two characters will have a pre-established relationship. There's no way of telling for sure, at least not this early, but that's the impression I actually got from the second trailer. For Jason to be undercover, he'd need a reason to be undercover. If Lucia's getting out of prison towards the start of the game, there is no reason for that. Whatever crime she's committed prior to this point, she's serving her time for. So there wouldn't appear to be a plausible assignment there. Unless of course the target is Brian, who's been knocking about for a bit, so it would make some sense, but even then the two characters appear to have a long-standing solid rapport. I mean, you could argue he joined the army, did some other stuff, and has been sent to infiltrate Brian's network, but how would that then tie into the broader shenanigans of Grand Theft Auto? And I think that's probably important to remember before we get too bogged down with narrative theories to which we simply don't have enough data, instead judging off of two trailers, a right bucket load of out of context screenshots, and the occasional sentence. And that is that the Grand Theft Auto series is raving mad. There are high-octane heists, insanely high body counts, it's total chaos, and GTA 6 is looking to be no exception. And sure, it's absurd enough that in Grand Theft Auto 5 Michael used a corrupt FIB agent to initially escape the criminal lifestyle when you can control his character and kill people right up until the moment he's seemingly taken out. So there's certainly leeway for absurd engagements with the authorities in the Grand Theft Auto series, but that absurdity would be far more prominent if Jason were a cop. Yes, there's a commentary afoot here that being a police officer doesn't exonerate you from also being a criminal, but Rockstar Games protagonists typically possess a heightened awareness to the parody around them, seemingly able to identify when things are getting absurd. It's true of Grand Theft Auto, and it's certainly also true of Red Dead Redemption, though the parody's a lot more subtle. So for Jason, this would work up until the first few shootouts with the authorities that are no doubt a given, after which point he'll have to sit there and contemplate the mates he's killed just to preserve his cover. And that absurdity might be a smidgen too far and a bit unsubtle, as to not be making any point whatsoever and just be funny. And then there's the open world stuff to factor. You'll be given a vast world to commit countless crimes in. Would that really be appealing to such a character, or would it exist in contrast? Sure, more or less every Grand Theft Auto has us working in proximity to corrupt police officers or law enforcement officials of some capacity, so being a cop in this universe doesn't make you automatically moral. But remember where I mentioned the main protagonists will likely possess a heightened sense of self-awareness, typically functioning as the mouthpieces for the cynicism the game presents. The main protagonist in these games has to stand amidst the madness and be a bit of a voice of reason. They have to be intelligent, level-headed, rational. Even Trevor fits this bill by comparison to the world he occupies, and so the establishment of this character in the world has to be quite straightforward prior to us getting involved. Often they slot in as newcomers to most situations they find themselves in, and that allows them to believably react to it in character in any which way necessary, typically as you'd expect a normal person to. And that's the vehicle through which the commentary is typically elaborated. So in GTA especially, the character is easiest portrayed as an entity unto themselves, rather than part of a broader organisation or gang of some description. So whatever they're doing for the bulk of the game, they function well, especially when you integrate the open world stuff, as something of a free agent. Because it gets wacky out there, unbelievably so, perhaps beyond the point of believability. But the more barriers you put between the character and the player truly exploring the sandbox on display, including haphazardly blasting rockets at things for giggles, the less believable it can be. Would playing as an undercover cop bring us closer to the experience being cohesive, or would it simply just make no sense and be farther away than ever? That's the key question here. And being honest, I would perceive the latter there. Now, I'm sure there will be affiliations with corrupt representatives of law enforcement, as that would be pretty on brand for Grand Theft Auto. So if anything, I'm inclined to believe this could be Jason. I'm partial to this theory proposed by a Reddit user named Sidewinder98 that suggests that Jason may very well be working alongside corrupt cops as an extension of his own criminality. But how established that is at the beginning of the story is up in air. I wouldn't assume much if at all. After all, like I said, GTA functions best when the protagonist is meeting the bulk of the characters for the first time and we get the impressions. But that's not an absolute rule. Either way, some interaction with corrupt cops is pretty standard for GTA. However, some pre-existing affiliation may be what saw Lucia freed, the sheer luck alluded to on the website. And who knows, maybe Jason being pressured by police might serve as a source of tension between him and Lucia, especially towards the middle and later stages of the game. But that is all speculation, I'm afraid, and what harm does speculation do? After all, what else are we going to do for a year? But to weigh in finally with my thoughts on the whole theory, unburdened by the details, I really don't think Rockstar will blow it in marketing so early by having a plot twist be revealed by 2 trailers, about 70 screenshots, and the odd sentence on a website. It's nonsensical on their part, so anything that could be viewed as evidence could also be viewed a million different ways, and what we're left with is very little of substance, I'm afraid. It's worth noting we're at that stage in the marketing campaign where we don't really know enough about the game to make cohesive theories, so be prepared for a long few months of people throwing their ideas at the wall hoping something sticks, and I'm not expressing complete disagreement with the theory as presented in today's video, the one that I don't necessarily agree with based on what we know, but hey, maybe that will change down the line and maybe the game will prove me wrong on that. However, based on what I would anticipate from Grand Theft Auto, not that subversion of expectations is something Rockstar is afraid of, I just don't see it yet, neither do I expect people to be hitting the mark after a couple of trailers. I'm just throwing the idea out there that if this does turn out to be the case, maybe it's a tad too obvious, which is why I think there'll be something far more complex and interesting that isn't necessarily this idea. Anyway, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I'm going to end this video now. I do apologise, I don't think this topic was worth 17 minutes of painstaking explanation, but over the years I appear to have lost the ability to be concise. However, if you did suffer me for 17 minutes, thank you all very much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, maybe subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. It would be massively appreciated, but only do that if you want to. And with a stroke of luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point, but until next time, take care, and goodbye.